Good evening, everyone. Hello. I'm just seeing people joining now. Welcome to this evening's webinar for parents, presented by me. I'm Murray Morrison, the founder of Tassomai. I'm going to share my screen now, which is much more interesting to look at than me sitting in an increasingly cold shed. Now, we're just going to start off with a quick run through of the presentation, what we're going to try and share with you today, and then we'll get into it. So, first of all, an outline of what we're going to talk about today. First of all, we're going to introduce ourselves, not only introduce myself and my colleague Spencer, but also find out a little bit about you all as well. If I can remember how to do that on Zoom. We're going to tell you a little bit about Tassomai, for those of you who aren't using it, and then we'll get into the kind of main body of things. As joining this webinar as parents, I'm assuming most or all of you are parents of Year 11 students working towards their GCSE exams this year, the first GCSEs in 3 years, in fact, and looking about how we can help our children really kind of get the best out of themselves for that exam. But if you're parents of younger years, perhaps they're facing other tests ahead, then this is all still going to be relevant, I hope, and useful to you. We'll talk about the real crunch time of the Easter holidays and what you can do between now and Easter to really set that break up for its most productive revision time. And in fact, there may be even revision break in the summer term as well. So what to do to get ready for that. How to really make the best possible job of identifying knowledge gaps so you can be really strategic about how, or your child can be really strategic about how he or she revises, but how you can support that. And really important, I think, particularly for this group of students who have had no real regular schooling for the last 3 years and very disrupted time, how to manage the stress of approaching these exams with what feels like so much riding on it. It doesn't have to be so make or break, but of course for young people facing the situation, it's a very stressful time. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And there's hopefully going to be time for Q&A. Bit of housekeeping and introduce ourselves. I'm Murray, I'm the founder of Tassomai, so I'm an ex-teacher and tutor, and I built Tassomai really to help my students, but it's now something that's used widely across the country. So I'm here, I'm doing this. And I'm joined by my colleague Spencer, who will be monitoring the chat. And so that's the first thing to tell you is if you have questions to get into and answer, have answered, please put them in the chat. Spencer will be there and probably be able to answer them all. I mean, he's much cleverer than me, but he'll be able to answer them all. But what he'll also do is take some of those questions if there are themes emerging and add them to the end so that we can address them for the group. And so we'll move on to the next bit, which is having introduced myself, I'm going to try, I'm so bad at Zoom, I'm really sorry. I'm going to try to run a little questionnaire, get some audience participation. That probably shouldn't be able to see that. Launch poll. I'm going to launch a poll. There we are. And it's just asking you, first of all, do you know about Tassomai? Do you use it already? Because, okay, most of you know it, you're familiar with it. I'm not going to spend too much time. This is not a sales conference. I'm not trying to sell Tassomai to you. This is only about finding out whether you have access to it and whether that's a useful and practical thing to talk about in preparation or whether it's completely irrelevant to you. Great. For the 4 of you who don't use Tassomai, aren't familiar with it, please do come and check out the website. There's lots of information on there. I will kind of refer to it a bit, but not exhaustively. And as I say, the practical information here hopefully will be of use to you as well. But it's worth knowing, if you don't use it, you're not a member of the club already, we are having a little promotion that makes, you have a free week's trial anyway, but you have the first month of your subscription at half price. And if you use the promo code, which I'll give you at the end, I'll give you now as well, in case you get cut off, it's checks notes. First half altogether, all one word, first half, if you use that code, you get half price on your first month. I've been made to say that by people higher up than me. So use that promo code if you want to have a go and get half price on your first month. But for most of you, I can see, thank you very much for filling it in. Helps me know there's someone out there as well. 50-50 with of the 90% of you who use it, 50-50 over whether you're familiar or not. So I'll end that poll, get it off the screen, and I will share results. Here you go. I don't know what that did. Right. So we'll move on a quick bit about another question about you, in fact. We've published something called the GCSE Survival Guide, where we've got lots of articles. I'm going to refer to it later when we talk about exam stress. But one of the things we put in there was the sort of archetypes of Year 11 revisers. And I'm going to put these up, tell you a bit about them, and then I'm going to ask you really, which one is your child? We've got 5 here. The first one is the ostrich. Doesn't take much explanation. This is the kind of student who, because of all this stuff coming down the line, they just maybe stick their head in the sand. They lock themselves in the room with no idea whether they're doing any work or not. And they're running scared a bit. Very common, of course. Then there's a sort of variation on that, which is the porcupine, which also kind of, when cornered, is sort of hiding out, really, but when cornered will shake their quills and be a little bit perhaps difficult and aggressive with you. The third type is the lion, something I came across quite a lot when I was teaching. These are students in the top set, maybe. They're quite high ability, they feel very confident, but they seem to be lying around quite a lot, doing very, very little. And the question is really, are these students, are these kids maybe hiding some deeper nerves and some worries and anxieties that having the right structure of their revision could really help with? The fourth type is the bowerbird, slightly more obscure animal, unless you watch David Attenborough. Bowerbird is this animal that builds a very beautiful nest with lots of colourful things it finds, and beads and things like that. If your child is the kind of person who is spending all of their revision time colouring in their notes and making things look beautiful, but maybe isn't doing much practical work, then they're the bowerbird. And then the last one, which seems like a very good one to have, is the meerkat. This is a kind of student who is busy, busy, busy all the time, working terribly, terribly hard and very alert and on it. But are they getting enough rest and relaxation? Are they keeping enough balance in their life? Are they overcompensating, perhaps? So that's the worry for that one. And the question I'm going to put on here, sorry if I'm being rubbish with the polling thing, is which one of these do you think is your child? I've just launched that poll. So I'm gonna guess, okay, yeah, unsurprisingly, I'm getting a few ostriches and porcupines coming in. I mean, they are 16, right? So you expect a little bit more of that aggression maybe when you start prodding them. My son's 8, so he's very nicely behaved. I'm expecting porcupine behavior soon. Great, thanks very much for filling that in. Wow, everyone answered, and a pretty even stretch actually. And I'm gonna just share those results, and then I'm going to stop sharing because I realized I didn't stop sharing before. But lots of porcupines, ostriches. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is hopefully some things you can do that mitigate lots of these behaviors. Now, if you're the 9 with the meerkats, then really there's the same tone of conversation, but really, as you can imagine, it's more about questioning, do you have enough balance in your life? Are you giving yourself enough time to relax and save your energy and not burn out too early? But for the rest, it's really kind of quite standard fare. The kind of practical advice is often the same in terms of planning and preparation. That's what we're going to go into in detail. So first of all, very quickly about Tassomai, for those of you who don't know it, it doesn't actually look like this. This was a design concept that's got stuck in a slide. But what Tassomai does is it personalizes daily retrieval practice quizzing. So it's something that ideally students should be logging into and doing every day. And it's based on the ideas that athletes and musicians know, of course, that you practice little and often, and gradually you build up familiarity with skills. And this is applied to retrieval practice, revision. So we set in the app daily goals. Those daily goals of quizzes are built around the previous answers you've given. So we'll give supportive learning questions and videos if you're showing gaps, and we'll stretch you in areas where you're improving to just try and keep all the plates spinning. Crucially, it's an organization device. Tassomai is actually Greek for I organize myself. It's all about keeping things organized, because that, for my students, certainly was the hardest thing. Can you keep all those plates spinning? So that's what we do. But we also, there's some more screenshots. We also do something for schools, if you're using it at school, where we give teachers loads and loads of data in these colorful dots that tell them, right, here are where the gaps are. Here's where your class is struggling. Here's where you maybe not done such a good job of teaching that topic, or you need to go around it again. So we accumulate loads of data which we use for educational benefit, for helping teachers and helping students. Now, what we do for students is tailor those quizzes to them, but teachers, we give that data. But recently, we've started to show that data to students and to parents. So if you have an account, you'll have access to the kind of data that I'll show you soon. But if you don't, we can figure out how to get you access to that. And you can certainly do it through your child's account. Just very briefly, the kind of concept I mentioned, sport and music, it's really about replicating what elite athletes, elite musicians, people who are professional practices do to succeed. So I'm trying to apply that to revision and learning on this basis that practice makes not permanent. Oh, it does make it permanent. It doesn't make it perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you are practicing badly, you're practicing the wrong things or in the wrong way, you're doing yourself damage. So Tassomai is all about quick feedback to correct your practice as you go. So we'll move on now. That's the whole pitch about Tassomai. Let's get into the practical ways that you can help. As I mentioned before, I have a background in sport as well as teaching, and I learned so much about the way great coaches coach and the way great athletes prepare. And so a lot of this is that kind of psychology, that kind of mentality applied. But also, I'm fortunate, my co-founder is a child and adolescent psychotherapist. She's really expert in how young people think and how to best plan and motivate for them. So the first thing is to really know your child. I mean, obviously you know your child, but knowing that they're the ostrich or the porcupine or the lion really should help set your approach. You know, when there's a real practical deadline ahead, these exams are coming up, you've got to kind of, I suppose, make some concessions in order to get the big win, right? So there's no point in kind of going head to head and locking horns, like fighting it out in the hope that that will get the result. I think at the moment, it's more like, and I'm sorry, I do speak in cliches all the time and mixed metaphors, we're more about steering battleships now, kind of like just nudging and pushing people in the right direction where they get the best out of themselves. So knowing if your child's a porcupine and they're going to meet resistance, it's about taking the tone of that conversation very gently in order to let them find that self-confidence themselves, and maybe they become less spiky. The fundamental, most important thing I can tell anyone to do is to create a reasonable study routine. And I guess I mean sustainable here. Like there's no point in going off saying, right, we've got 100 days for the exams or whatever it is. We're going to do an hour a day or 2 hours a day, and we'll have done 200 hours and everything's going to be great if they're not capable of doing that 2 hours a day. It's really about setting, think of it as, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but it's setting your daily routine to be something that's sustainable. And sure, it can build as you get more time in Easter holidays, you get a revision break. It can build as you increase focus, but having a routine that's established and sustainable around which you can build rewards is really important. And I mentioned that in the next point here, thinking about rewards and motivations. For students, I do free tuition every night on Tassomai, and I talk to loads and loads of kids about how they're using the program. And I always tell them this kind of thing about a routine tied to rewards. If they're doing their Tassomai, it's 10 minutes. Do it before breakfast. And then if you've done it well, like you've answered the questions and you've tried your best and you've had good accuracy, then your breakfast can be the reward that you give yourself. Well, I like marmalade, but whatever. Crunchy nut cornflakes. And if you've done it badly, then you have to have Weetabix, which, as we all know, is the worst thing in the world. So you get that quick feedback, and the same thing you can build into everything you do, whether it's about pocket money or chores or staying up late or watching Squid Game. I hope they're not watching Squid Game. You can build these rewards and motivations quickly around the daily routine. So think about something you can reward or withhold daily that fits around that routine. But again, know your child. Don't set them a routine to do 6 hours revision every day, knowing that they're going to be set up to fail. You've got to work with them in a gentle way, and you can discuss that routine. And crucially, this is something that's a conversation between you and your child. Okay, so it's got to be something that they're bought in on. You can't drop it on them, but actually they should really come up with this. What can you reasonably do? And this is where we come into SMART goals I'll go into a bit more detail about SMART goals for those of you who don't know it. But it's really just the most, I can't recommend it enough as an approach, whether it's setting goals for myself, for yourself, or with somebody else, using these guidelines I'll come into in a second, and make this goal setting the basis of your conversation on which you plan your routine. So this is not, actually opinions differ, but this was the most colorful looking graphic I could steal from the internet. So you can hopefully read this on, I don't know how big my screen is appearing, of course, but your goals need to be specific. That is, you're not just going, do better in chemistry, but rather your goal around routine might be, we will spend 1 hour on revising this topic. Okay, but longer term goals are more like, I'm not going to be the best at cricket, but because that's not really specific. It is specific, but it's like, it's kind of unrealistic. You want to make a goal that's very kind of clear on what it is, that you can measure how that's going. So you can measure the success when it happens, but you can also measure your route to success. Make the goal attainable. So I've talked about that before, like that it's got to be something that actually feels like you can do it. Relevant goes without saying. It's got to be specifically aligned to your company mission. That's where it came from. So one of these business sites. It's got to be relevant to the task at hand, but also time-based. So making your goal setting, making your plans something that's clocked, that you can say, by next Sunday, we will have gone over this material and this material, and I'll be able to get 10 out of 10 on a quiz. That's a kind of very specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based goal. And setting your goals with short and long terms on these kind of guidelines is really going to be a recipe for success. But crucially, and I am repeating myself, sorry, this is a conversation that you do in collaboration with your child. So you kind of work with them to set these goals and set that routine. And then you can make that the basis of all your conversations. So instead of, and this is the kind of key thing, instead of having this conversation where you're saying, I don't think you're doing enough, I think I am doing enough, argument. Instead, your thing can be, you were planning on covering this today. How did that go? And then you draw it out of them. They might say, it went really well, I feel confident, or I didn't get to it because I was playing FIFA. The goals that you set and the routines that you set can be the basis for the conversation and the basis for their self-reflection. Like, okay, I didn't do what I set out to do. I got distracted. This is the thing I need to now improve on and work on. And you avoid those conversations where you're saying, I don't think you're doing enough. I think I am doing enough. And it's unmeasurable and unfocused and destructive. Right. Now, to get into the kind of the practicals, Easter holidays is your time or your child's time to do their majority of their revision. So you want that time to be as productive as possible. And ideally, you want them at the point where when they have that time luxury, they can be doing the big things like practice exam questions, maybe even whole practice papers. For my students, I always held that right back. But at some point you need to practice, can I knock out 3 2-hour exam papers in a day? Because sometimes the exam timetable hits them like that, unfortunately. But the practice questions, doing practice answers and things like that, that's a thing for the Easter holidays where they've got time and energy and they're not trying to do it when they're frazzled at the end of the day. So between now and then is your chance to really strategize and plan. At some point I should look at my notes. Okay, yeah, pretty much. Okay, so strategizing and planning, this is like I'm like a broken record on this one, but you have quite a few weeks until we've just started the second half of term. So you've got half a term to do this strategizing and planning. They should really do this themselves, but this is something you can really support with. So let's get into that. Oh, a nice colorful slide, a home stretch. Okay, so how to do this. There is one resource out there, aside from Tassomai, obviously, which is the most useful thing you can have for exam preparation. And that is the exam board's own specification document. I've said this so many times, I feel probably some of you will have heard me say it several times and probably heard it yourself. But if there's any chance you didn't know this now. Exam specifications are the key to top marks. They are big documents, but they're also public domain. You can download them from the internet. And they are the exam's guide to how to pass the exam. they're the exam board's guide. They make them for the teachers to teach to as a set of criteria. I even stole a screenshot from one today. There we go. This is AQA biology, most common biology course. And don't worry about all this text, but actually, if you've never done biology, and obviously, well, you've not done it since you did your own exams, one of the big problems is parents don't feel confident, maybe, that they can help with the subject. You don't have to help with the subject, help with the routine and help with the strategizing. But actually, even if you don't remember your biology or physics or geography, it really does tell you so much here. So this is the topic of organization. In this section, we learn about this. And damage to the system can do this. Like, it's telling you loads of stuff. You don't even need a textbook if you've got this, to be honest. But at some point, it says things like this: students should be able to develop an understanding of size and scale in relation to cells, tissues, organs, and systems. So you can use what's in that spec to ask your child, well, do you understand the size and scale of cells, tissues, organs, and systems? Do you understand what a cell is? Well, I mean, you don't necessarily know that. A cell is smaller than a tissue, several tissues make up an organ, so an organ's made of tissues, tissues are made of cells, and so on. But so much of the content in the exam spec is just like a checklist. It says things like, students should know, blah, blah, blah. Students should be able to recall this. Students should be able to explain this. And it's just a checklist of stuff to know. So these are big documents. For goodness sake, don't download it and print. It'll be like 75 pages and you've got 5, 10, 15 to print. But if you're smart with your printer, first of all, there's a load of dross in there you don't want. The real key stuff is about 10 or 15 pages in the middle. And if you can print, 2 pages to a page or something like that, so you're not wasting too much paper, then I'd say go for it and wallpaper the room with it. But what you do with this is you use this checklist and you go through with your child. Do you know that? How do you feel about that? And that's a really key question. How do you feel about that piece of knowledge? Are you confident? Like you couldn't get it wrong. You just know it. You know it inside out. Then you color that in with a highlight. So color that green, the green traffic light. If there's something that's like, I've no idea, never even heard of an enzyme, right? That's a pink or red or whatever you've got for kind of like alarm, right? You color that in that color. And then you've got shades in between, right? So my coach used to tell me amateur practice until they get something right, and professional practices until they can't get it wrong. So my criteria for kind of green is I can't get it wrong. I just know it. There's no way I can mess it up. Green is like, the stage below that is like, I think I know it. I think I could get it right on my day, but I'm not certain. And then you've got the ones like, no idea. So if you've done your traffic lights on that, and actually don't color the whole thing in, but put a colored dot, that's quite important. Then later on, you can revisit that and go down that checklist again and say, well, how do you feel about that now? Is that red now and orange? Is it yellow? Great. So you can see things change. And that ties in again to the kind of daily routine and goals you can set. But that traffic highlighting from the spec is going to give you absolute clarity and give your child absolute clarity on where their focus needs to be. Now, of course, you do need to consider in some exams and some boards, they've reduced the content, so some stuff's maybe not relevant anymore. You've got to cross-check with that. On Tassomai, we are removing from the year 11 the stuff they don't need, but there's not actually that much of it. Most of it's still in and relevant, and in maths and so on, it's all still there. So use that spec to help you plan, and then consider as well, maybe we're not all going to get 100% on the exam. There are some things which, if we're really up against it and there's loads of red, we might have to say some topics, they're acceptable losses. If the topic of radiation and if that comes up and I know I'm not going to know it, then that's a chance for me to just leave that question and focus on the rest. So you could be strategic as well about like, let's get 75%, 80% of this spec really drilled and really well known. But hopefully, it doesn't come to that. Hopefully, you can get a really good overview of the course. We do this in Tassomai as well. And if you're, as majority of you have children using Tassomai, it's really important to understand how you can use the data in that to steer your revision. So going back to earlier, sustainable routine, get them to do their Tassomai every day. Do their daily goal, do their bonus goal. It should take 10 minutes. And crucially, make an effort to get the answers right. There are lots of kids out there who are just like, just want to get it done and they spam it, just answer as quickly as they can. Well, notwithstanding the fact that it'll take forever to do it if they're not trying, and they'll get it done in no time if they are. It's really important you try and get the answers right, because then that helps the algorithm diagnose where the gaps are. And if they're doing that and building their routine, then they'll have access to this data in the tree. We'll also give them videos that say, watch this. And it might be me, or it might be my colleague Georgia or someone else sort of saying, here's what you need to know about this thing where we know you're struggling. If they're offered a video, get them to watch the video. At the end of each daily goal, it'll say, here are some resources to look at on bite size. And it's well worth then going off and having a read of those. They're one page, and they're deliberately chosen to fit around a gap they've shown their quizzing. So do get them to use that within the app. But also, well, this is where I changed screens. Yes, this is the tree. So this is a living map of what a student knows and what they don't. This is actually my tree in physics. And before you lose all confidence in me, I got these wrong on purpose to make the tree look right, promise. So I'm pretty good at physics. So that was my degree or whatever. So most of these branches are topics in physics where I'm doing quite well. So if you click on any branch, you can get your child to do it in their app, or if you've got access to your own login, you can do it as well. If you click on that, it tells you what that is. That's the branch of electricity and circuits, and I'm absolutely smashing it. So that's all great. Lots of green, healthy leaves, lots of new growth where I'm unlocking new questions. That's all lovely. Here is a branch where I'm doing quite well, but there's one question I've got wrong. This is on scalar and vector quantities. So you can use this tree to go and look at the questions that your child's getting wrong. But right here, and I'm sure you can all see it, there's a branch where there are problems, where there are more gaps. So we've got, lots of yellow and orange leaves. Yellow is where I'm kind of up and down. I'm being a bit careless, but there are red leaves here. What is this branch? I bet I know it's on magnets. Yeah, magnetism and the motor effect. It's a tough topic in higher tier. This is EdXL physics. So you can use that to go and see, right, what are the gaps? And then you can find out what questions they're getting wrong. Now, I would recommend, really, if you're using the tree, you get your child to get a notebook where there's a page per branch, and they write down all their red and orange leaf questions. You can even tick that box. Oh, that looks wintry, and just see the red questions. And that's my physics. If I look at something different, I look at how I'm doing Macbeth, then actually, yeah, not bad actually, but you can see, okay, this is broken into themes and characters and so on. And there's something I'm getting wrong here about Macduff. A couple of questions wrong about Macduff. So you just get right into it. You can easily gravitate to where the gaps are. It works really nicely, but you can use these for takeaways. So again, the takeaways are to find those orange leaves and get your child to write down those orange and red questions in the book. They nearly always work as self-contained facts. This is a quote students need to know. Bring thou this fiend of Scotland and myself. So that's a quote they need to know. And it'll apply to other questions. We'll connect up. Get them to write that down. And then when they next do the quiz on Macbeth characters, and that'll come up, they can turn to the page in their notebook where they've written down all their red and orange leaves, and guess what? Get all those questions right. And that's sort of cheating, but not really. Somebody once wrote on, I can't remember, we found it on Google, somebody like, how to cheat at Tassomai. When you get a question wrong, go back, write down the answer in a notebook, and then next time you do the quiz, you'll get the answer right. I'm like, good cheating there. That's called learning. That's exactly what your child should do if they want to get the best out of their Tassomai revision, but also then taking those gaps and thinking, okay, now I need to do some deeper, wider reading in that topic. Where am I? Okay. Identify knowledge gaps. Okay, yeah, good. Okay, I'm on to the last one, which is fairly quick because I'm not a brilliant expert. My theory on managing stress is all about these ideas of growth mindset and metacognition. If your child has a healthy, manageable, sustainable routine around their daily revision practice, if they can have that routine to hold on to, it's like a foothold, a handhold on the wall, then that's something from which good things can be built. I had a big thing I needed to do last week. like a big thing for my business. I had to fill in all this stuff about data and numbers and tech stack and product roadmaps and God knows what. It was really, 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 really hard and daunting. And on Monday, I was ill. I was ill with nerves, actually, because there was this vast task in front of me. And I'm 43, and that happens to me not very often, but it happened definitely to me last week. I had this task to do, and I didn't know where to start, and I wanted to cry. But got a bit of help, got some support from colleagues. And we said, right, let's do this bit today and send that off tomorrow. And this bit, we'll send that off the next day. And we told the people, we'll send you this on Wednesday, this on Thursday, this on Friday. We broke it down. And of course, look at me now. I'm in a good mood. So the same applies here. Managing that stress, I really firmly believe, is about setting that routine early on and being a partner in the achievement of that routine rather than being an opponent. So working together to have those conversations about what's achievable, what are we going to try and do? Right, let's look at your specification or look at your tree. Where are your gaps? Let's make a plan to focus on them and set it all out. And then come Easter, we're going to really smash it. Great. And already that's a great way of mitigating the stress. But I will point you in the direction of, let's see, hang on. There's my website. Right, at the top of the website, there's a yellow banner with a link to GCSE. Lots of you will have already had it, probably, and that's how we got your email and told you about this webinar. But that is the GCSE Survival Guide, which has my face in it, everywhere. My face is everywhere. Loads of really good advice from brilliant professionals. That's Madeline, who's my co-founder. She's so brilliant and so knowledgeable about how to support teams. Expert teachers, school leaders, and lots of advice about the kind of do's and don'ts of supporting your child in stressful times, and just helping understand what's going on. There are my animals, that was my bit. So take a good look at that, but also, practical advice on the different subjects. So do take a look at that if you've not done already. But I think I put another thing in here. It's really worthwhile as well, just spending some time looking up, trying to find out about the best ways to learn and revise. So, I mean, in short, kind of use Tassomai, because that's why I built it, to use the sort of scientifically proven methods, repetition, testing yourself, self-examination and witnessing. Oh, I didn't know that last week, and now I do. Great. That kind of thing only comes from testing with feedback, testing yourself, whether it's flashcards or an app. Don't let your child be the bowerbird and spend all their time coloring in their notes, or even copying out your notes is pretty wasteful of time. You feel like you're being busy, but you're not. You're wasting time. If you want to copy out your notes, if your child wants to copy out their notes, it's really about an exercise in distillation. They've got 10 pages of notes on Elizabeth I. All right, I'm going to take those 10 pages and I'm going to distill it down into half a side of like key bullet points of facts I need to know. Elizabeth I was the sister of Mary I. I don't know much about Elizabeth I. Tell me about Walsingham. I don't know. Anyway, you distill those notes down, that's good, but copying out notes, not good. Coloring in notes, a disaster, apart from that traffic light on the specification. So avoid that as well. So knowing those things, really, really helpful. I think that's the end of my, I say prepared remarks. I think that's probably pushing it, but my sort of routine remarks. I hope that as an overview was useful and helpful. Oh, I think I added last minute the thing about the promo. There you are, that's the promo code for the thing. But if there are questions, I can see the chat thing saying that there are things in chat. I will try and address them now. I think Spencer may have been answering questions. He may have been adding questions, but I'm not sure where. Oh yeah, there we are. He's added them at the top. I thought they'd be at the bottom. I've got lots of screens. I'm looking over there. Sorry for no eye contact. I'm going to stop the screen share. Yeah, maybe do that. And I'll bring these questions over to the screen that's got the camera on it, if I can do that. And we'll get into them. Thank you again so much. I'm sorry, I'm a real rambler. But I hope that that's been useful as an overview. I should say as well, I'm really easy to get hold of. Lots of you are already using Tassomai, so You can find me through your parent reports. You can set up meetings. You can just email us and say, I'd like to talk to Murray about something, or, ask. I'm always here and very easy to get hold of. Right, so a question from, am I allowed to say names of people who said that? I suppose they're in the chat. A question from Verity. It says, I've noticed on my child's weekly progress report, their progress has dropped in 2 months that they've been doing it. Does that mean they're getting worse or the questions are getting harder? Very good question, and a very important question, and very relevant, I'm sure, to lots of people who have children using Tassomai. Several things are happening. First of all, when you start on Tassomai, we don't know who you are and how good you are, so we give you quite easy questions, and then we fairly rapidly find your level. So the questions start easy and do get harder. That's definitely the case. That said, we really, really encourage everyone to try and keep their answers in the range of 65% upwards, really aim for 75% upwards. Anything below 65% is a worry. And now, if you watch your child using Tassomai, if they're getting quizzes that are only 4 questions long and have mostly purple questions that repeat, then that's an alarm bell. That might also indicate not that your child's getting worse, but that they've maybe decided that they can get their daily goal done without really trying. And I hate to sound like my old teacher self, it's your own time you're wasting, but it kind of is. You're wasting your time if you're just like bang, bang, bang on the quiz and not trying to get the answers right. Really important that you encourage them to go for quality. If it's a choice between quality and quantity, quality. So if your child's accuracy is below 65%, I'd have a word with them and go, look, take your time to get the answers right. For what it's worth, they will get their daily goal done in far less time if they take a minute longer to get the answers right. They'll score far more points and they'll get it done. The simple example is to say, if you get 2 out of 4 on a quiz, you get 6 points. If you get 3 out of 4 on a quiz, you get 12 points. So by getting 1 more question right, you double your score. So we have Andrew who's asked, how can I progress? How can I progress? I'm not sure I'm understanding the wording of that question. Okay, but I get the idea that your child consistently on that 65% accuracy, that's kind of like where most people hover along if they don't have the nudge from someone supporting them. It's a really useful question, and again, I think one that will apply to lots of you whose children are using Tassomai, that they're just kind of hovering along, and if your child's on sort of 65%, most of their quizzes are going to be 4 or 5 questions. That's, again, a bad sign. So here's what to do, if you can make them do it. So good luck. If your quiz is going to be 4 or 5 questions, that's a sign that the algorithm's saying you're not doing too well here. And we're going to make this quiz come round over and over again and repeat the same questions until you get them right. All right. So get those questions right. But how to do it? Okay, so the quiz will have a name like, I'm sorry I've got a science focus, but that's me. The quiz will have a name like organic chemistry. Fine. Before the quiz, go find your tree. Go find your chemistry tree. Go find the branch that says organic chemistry and go and find the red leaves and the orange leaves, because those definitely are going to come, or at least a couple of them are definitely going to come up in the quiz. If you have a notebook with a page per topic, turn to that page that says organic chemistry, write down your red and orange leaves, and then leave the page open and use that to cheat on the quiz. Get them all right and get the accuracy up. Now, that feels like a slog to go and do that, but that's vital learning. And they'll get 4 out of 4 on the quiz, or 3 out of 4. They'll get more points and they'll get their daily goal done in less time, but also it will have been so much more productive for them. So yeah, anyone whose child is on accuracy even below 75%, I would suggest this, that for your short quizzes, the ones that the algorithm has identified as problems, use your tree to cheat. Use your tree to write down notes and then crib from them. By the way, once they've got the question right, they should really put a line through it. Like once you've got a question right, you want to try and get it right the next time on memory, but fight the battles you can win. Okay, we had a few questions about logging in Do we have our own login and can we use our child's? And can I see the previous information if my child's accessing Tassomai via the school? Not entirely sure what's meant by the previous information, but in terms of like history of usage, everything is visible and viewable from your child's account. So if you're not having a stand-up like physical fight about it, you can explore all their data through their login, including, of course, their tree, whether that's on the mobile app or on the desktop. And you can view past history. Now, I wonder if this question is about reviewing old quizzes. You can only review a few quizzes. To be honest, it's a massive strain on our servers, and we tested it and we found very few people used it beyond just looking at what you did last quiz. But every question your child has answered in their whole time on Tassomai is going to appear as a leaf on the tree. And the idea of the tree is to give you a kind of organic, tangible feel for like the structure of the course and where the gaps are. Now we could do, I might do it as another, I think I'll do it as another whole webinar. It's like real tree surgery, like how to read the tree, because I do it all day long now. And there's some cool stuff you can kind of read into the shapes and things. But essentially every question is on that tree and you can access it just through their account. But if you don't have an account or you're not aware of having an account, email us to check, we'll help you log in. Otherwise, email your school's head teacher and say, you've got this Tassomai thing, it's totally amazing. Why don't we have logins? Tassomai have told us all parents are entitled to a login, because you are, and we'll set that up for you. But some schools have been a bit cagey about setting it up because they're worried about data protection and things like that. We will set up accounts for you if you don't already have one. If you're getting a parent report, by the way, if you're getting a report on a Monday morning, you definitely have an account. And somewhere in there is a link that says login. But any trouble, admin@tassomai.com or anything you like at tassomai.com, it'll get to us and we'll help you log in. There's a question here I don't know the answer to. My child gets science with the school. Can we buy into other subjects? I mean, basically, yes, I'm pretty sure you can. And again, if you contact Edward or Zoe, who do our customer support, brilliant people, they'll help you out. But actually, it's a really interesting indicative question. My child gets science with the school. We are big in science, and science teachers know about us and really like the app by and large. But we have maths and English available for the school for free. If your child's got science with the school, then English and maths is part of the package. They just need to set it up and talk to us and get in touch, and we'll do it. So first thing to do is to say to the school, why aren't you using the maths and the English on Tassomai? Because it's free. It's part of the package you've paid for. But otherwise, if they say no and dig their heels in, get in touch and we'll happily set you up. I just saw okay, so I'll keep going on. So Paul says, can Tassomai be used for all subjects? And for kids who are catching up, could it be used as a learning resource on a revision course? Sorry, I should say that out loud because you can't say, can it be used as a learning resource rather than a revision resource? Absolutely. I believe really, and the reason I built the program was absolutely about steady, ongoing support to learning. I don't believe in revision. I don't like the idea that my students are revising. I want them to know everything and not have to revise, because they've been rehearsing that knowledge day in, day out, all the time. Like I often use this analogy about tying shoelaces. It's really, really hard. You've all had to teach your children how to tie their shoelaces. It's kind of hard when you learn, right? And it takes a little while. But by the time you're 7 or something and you've been tying your laces, it's easy. And for me, I tie my shoelaces at least twice a day, every day. I can do it with my eyes closed, standing on one leg. It's easy. If somebody told me we're going to do a shoelace tying exam tomorrow, I wouldn't start revising now. I'd be like, well, fine, I know that. It's easy. That's what Tassomai is about. It's about everyday drip, drip effect of rehearsing knowledge, finding the gaps, ironing them out, stretching you more, and getting that knowledge embedded and rehearsed so that it's second nature. It's like the athletic equivalent of muscle memory, or the musician equivalent of muscle memory. A professional musician can just sort of play through their D flat minor scale without thinking about it. It just comes out of their fingers, that's what I'm trying to do. So absolutely, Tassomai is a lifelong learning tool to be used through year 9, 10, 11 for GCSE, or year 7 or 8 and so on. But we are where we are, and if you want to have a successful revision time now, you can cram it a bit more. Just don't do thousands of questions in a day. It reaches a sort of limit after a point. Once you've kind of done your daily goal and your bonus goal, maybe done 100 points or so, then I think stop, do something else. And that then you're kind of breaking it up and interleaving it. Similar on that theme, Diane asks, how are the number of questions for daily targets set? It depends on a few factors, but broadly speaking, if your child's in year 11 and doing one subject, that daily goal might start as 100 points, which if you get everything right, sorry, multi-target, I was seeing questions up here. If you get everything right, 100 points is like 35 questions. But if you get your daily goal done today, it should come down tomorrow. The idea is we're just trying to build in this idea about the habit of like, a streak, a reward, and say, if you're doing it every day, you don't have to do so much. I think, so how is it, sorry, I'm really losing my thread. The daily goal starts at whatever it starts at, 100 or 50, depending on the year group and how many subjects they've got. And if they do it every day, it can drop down to half that number as a daily goal, because we think if you're doing it every day for 7 days, you do a little bit and get maximum benefit. If you stop and leave it for a week, then we want to get you to catch up. So that's basically the mechanism it works on. You can always agree with your child, I want you to get 100 points a day at 75% accuracy, and there's no limit to how many questions they can do on the app. So somebody has said, they've asked the school to set up the maths and they wouldn't. Schools are, especially maths department, tend to be in love with the programs they've got, and there are some very good ones out there, so that's fine. Yes, it's possible to set up the maths separately through us. I'm not very familiar with how that works anymore. I used to do it. I used to be customer support as well. So I think if you just get in touch with the team and they can walk you through it. There is this promo code until like the end of tonight. I'm sure if you call them tomorrow and tell them that you were on the webinar, I'm sure they'll help you out with that same discount. Just because it's my incompetence, I don't know how to answer the question, but Spencer might put it in the chat. You never know. Any suggestions for how I can use Tassomai or other resources for the longer questions? So hopefully there's time to get into this. I think if we're talking about exam questions, so first of all, longer questions in exams, Tassomai is designed to give you the building blocks for them. What we're trying to give students is a strong understanding of how the basic facts work, how they interlink, so the sort of synthesis of that knowledge. But we also do lots of stuff about processes. So in maths, we might say, we won't say solve this equation, we'll say, here is this equation being solved, pick the option that has the steps in the right order. Or here's a process of titration in chemistry, which one is the fourth step or the third step. So we're trying to give them the bits and pieces to piece together those bigger pictures so they can answer the longer questions. Tassomai totally supports that. But there's another aspect here, which is sort of exam practice, which I think is really important. Lots of people sort of shoot their bolt too early. They do exam practice at Christmas time, and then they run out of exams to practice. Really good to do what we're talking about now, this kind of retrieval practice, looking at the specs, going, okay, I don't know that. I'm going to look in my textbook and read that and then answer the questions at the bottom of the page. I'm going to use those other resources to really get my knowledge honed and get confident in my knowledge. Now you've done that, now in the Easter time and in the run-up to the exams, start looking at exam questions. And the way I would do that always, or tell my students, is a few tips here. First of all, have the mark scheme on the desk. You're not actually sitting the exam, you're practicing for the exam, so practice. Don't just do the exam and then go, oh, I failed at the end. So you get the exam paper and you look at question 1, or question 1's a silly question, but look at question 7. It asks you about this process or this thing, or write this essay, and you, early days, look at the exam mark scheme and say, what are the examiners looking for? Oh, that and that and that. Okay, interesting. I probably wouldn't have got that, or I would. Fine. Now do the exam answer and see if you can model that answer to fit the answer scheme. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is doing questions, and immediately you've done it, then go to the answer scheme and see, well, how did I do? What did I get right or wrong? Give yourself some feedback and then correct it. So that's how I would get into the exam questions. And only maybe once or twice at the end would I sit a whole exam paper, or get a student to sit a whole exam paper to see whether they've got the sort of stamina for it. One other tip, because I did used to teach a lot of maths, is in the maths papers, I recommend, when practicing maths papers, to hide all calculators. In science too, where there are mathematical answers, no calculators, nothing like that. Try to set out your answers that show the working and show the stages of your work, and stop short of the answer because, okay, we don't have a calculator. So your area equals pi r squared, which is pi times 4 squared, which is pi times 16, which is, I don't know, you can have a guess. 16 pi is about 50. So you can have a guess, but leave the calculator out so that you can practice getting that nice set out routine right. And then at the end, fine, get the calculator, tap the thing and put in the answer, because the answer isn't what matters in the end, it's the method. So those are my kind of tips for exam technique, if we get on to that. So that's beyond Tassomai. But Tassomai and other retrieval practice like that is really essential for laying the groundwork. I have no idea what time it is. Oh, we've gone over. Is there anyone left here? I don't know. Oh, lots of you. Great. Well, I think I've run out of things to say. But I really hope that was useful. And gosh, lots of you still here, which is miraculous. Thank you so much for giving up your time to come and listen to me ramble. As I said, very easy to get hold of. So just get in touch if you have any questions. Somebody's raised a hand. I just saw that pop up. Maybe lots of you have raised a hand. Oh my goodness, 50 new messages. Gosh, you're all so kind. Thank you so much. I really have no idea what I'm doing. We will do another webinar just about the tree. And we'll do lots more of these, but I fear I might be repeating myself, so I won't be offended if you don't come back. But I will do one about tree. Please look out for our messages and emails. We're doing lots more webinars from now on. If you're using Tassomai and you have the parent report, set up free tuition with me. I can do 15-minute little free sessions, and we'll look at the tree together, or I'll just tell your kid to pull their finger out or whatever it is you need me to do. I think, have I finished? Spencer, I think I'm gonna say thank you and bye-bye to everyone now, okay? Really appreciate it. You've all been so kind. That's a real boon. Thank you very much. See you all another time.